Hey, how's it going? Hi, hello, yeah.
Very. How are you doing?
Global pandemic. All the days are rolling into one. Monday and Friday are like the same thing. But yeah, otherwise healthy, thank God.
Great. So I saw one of the posters for Escape from Pretoria, and it says it's the most daring prison escape of all time. That sounds like a lot of pressure for a co-writer and a director. So how was it like for you?
Yeah. Now, this is where I wish the hyperbole of marketing teams when you're doing films, would sort of be checked by the director. I mean, but although it is, obviously dramatic hyperbole, there hasn't been an escape like this before. We've seen digging tunnels, we've seen, climbing out of a window with a bed sheet that you've tied together. We've seen sort of beating a guard, and this is the first time that at least I've seen. I watched about 47, 48 prison break films, from the 50s right through, and it's the first type of film that I saw where someone actually makes a contraption to actually open a door, a key, and actually use their mind, to sort of work out in that way. So it is unique. I would say it's the most, the most unique prison break that's been kind of committed to film, one could argue. And also it's got things like, the prison wing they were on, Pretoria political prison, was a white-only political prison. Now, to my historical knowledge, that it's the world's only white-only political prison anywhere in the world. And so there are, there are no political prisons. There's Robben Island and there's Pretoria, and that's it. And so again, it's that's a unique element. You don't have lots of political prisons around the world, let alone ones that are just for Caucasians. So it does have some USPs to it, I think. So yeah, to give the marketing team some kudos.
And what does it mean for you to sort of co-write and direct this movie, which is actually historic as well?
The book is about 400 pages long, and about 300 pages are dedicated towards to the escape attempt. And so you can tell right off the bat that if you want to be quite close, you want to be quite close to the book, you're going to be telling a prison escape film. That's going to be the bent of the story. And there's politics in there, but it's about, prison escape and the ingenuity of that and what it meant. And so, I felt that, it is important to be faithful to the meticulousness of it. If you're too fast and loose with it and you sort of brush over the hard or the very technical parts, then it makes it easy, which I didn't want to do. And one of the benefits of writing and directing is that there are benefits to each. When you direct something you haven't written, you can be this sort of new lens, and you're not sort of bogged down in the detail, and you can say, oh, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, because you have that objectivity, which is what everyone is striving for. And yet when you write it, as well as directing it, you can put a lot of the aesthetic of the film in the script. And also, so for example, we went over budget about 4 days into production, $250,000 over budget. Okay, so like what we're going to do. So because I was the writer, they said, well, we'd normally go to the writer and get him to fix it, but you're the writer. So whilst I was shooting, I had to go home at night after filming and rewrite scenes and change the location to a different part where the set was already built, so I didn't have to spend more money building new sets. So I had to do that. So being able to have the whole film in my head rather than communicate with the writer who then goes off for 2 days and rewrites and comes back and then you give notes, and that process was having been cut out, made a much more efficient process, cycle, which helped us in the end in terms of budgetary and schedule issues.
Right. I was going to ask how challenging it was, but I think what you just said was part of that. So, how do you wish that viewers from Africa would react to the movie? As
you may not really expect to have been fighting apartheid, but were in large numbers. So much so that there was a whole prison wing dedicated to them. So I think that voyeurism and that kind of that kind of familiarity mixed with the new of this specific story, I hope will, help Africans to engage. Yeah.
Great, and I mean, it's coming at a time where there's a huge cry, Black Lives Matter, people are doing protests and all of that. How, in your opinion, do you think this fits into all of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was watching, one of the many hundreds of thousands of videos that we still watching of, police brutality and low-level racial prejudice, and it was a Caucasian lady who was kind of, the typical thing, a Karen they call them, was going around and attacking an African-American family, husband and wife and 2 children, because they were laying a patio or something, and she wanted to see if they had a permit. And what was interesting was, it was the other white neighbours, it's a very wealthy area, but it was the other white neighbours who came out and said, why are you attacking them? And you're walking and you don't even have a mask, and look at how you're behaving, leave them alone. That was what actually caused the situation to sort of be curtailed and to be addressed. If they just sat and watched from their windows and said, oh, well, it's bad, but I'm not going to say anything, then you may have found a worse situation. But because the other Caucasians and Asian neighbours came out and spoke, it neutralised the situation and was able to sort of dissipate it. So I think with the Black Lives Matter, what's been interesting is seeing that, say, slightly different to, say, the civil rights movement in the 60s, you are seeing literally half of the crowds are white, they're Asian. You've got protests in Milan, you've got protests in Berlin, you've got protests in Chiang Mai. So you've got protests, all of big protests in European countries and Central Asian countries against this. So I think that collective universality, where it's not just one ethnic group, it's all ethnic groups, I think the film kind of is almost like a precursor to that, where you've got, middle-class, young, Caucasian men who are really, going through it and actually having prison sentences for what they believe in. And that kind of universality of everyone speaking out against racism, I think is a common theme between what's happening now and the story.
Right. And I like the fact that you brought out your Ghanaian heritage. I mean, for those who don't know much about you, we believe you started the journey sometime producing for the BBC. Can you give us an idea of some of the things you're doing and possibly what you have in mind in terms of Ghana? There's a lot of stories here. We are waiting for, I can't even say Kwame Nkrumah has never been told. What are your plans for us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a few things brewing. I had a project about the Notting Hill riots here in the UK in 1958. Where a lot of Caribbeans and West Indians were sort of, beaten in the streets. It was horrible. So that's one project. I've got a remake of a classic, which is also taking ground. One or two other projects. In terms of, someone has approached me actually about a Kwame Nkrumah project. They wanted to kind of make it into a TV series. I'm still interested in doing a film. I'm a big proponent of film, of cinema. Obviously, we have the pandemic at the moment, and so we can share the cinema through our TV screens, but I believe in films, in 2-hour narratives, and so I'm very interested in Kwame Nkrumah. I mean, my own grandfather, and people like Jerry Rawlings, who were able to bring, even with some of the criticisms that they leveled against them, they were still able to bring democracy, and that's held and stuck since '92. So yeah, there's lots of stories. I think there's been films like Ali by Michael Mann that filmed in Ghana. There's been other films that I've really enjoyed filming there, Beast of No Nation. So Ghana is on the map. But yeah, Kwame Nkrumah particularly is a story that I'm still looking to see how a feature film could, an iconic film could be made.
Great. Maybe we can now end up with the state of affairs within African film, Ghanaian cinema and African film in general. Is it a time for us? I mean, progressively, we've seen things happen that sort of puts us out there from the likes of Black Panther, even Lion King, and Netflix opening up in various countries within...
another lens and voice. And therefore, I think Africa is, in terms of artistic, is maximally untapped in terms of international voice. Now, obviously, with Nollywood and with Gollywood and things like that, and with a lot of Southern African films, there's been we've been enjoying and consuming our own entertainment. But in an international sense, I think the voice that Africans have, we've been telling stories since, Anansi and so on, so we have a strong history of telling stories, of allegory, of subtext, of metaphor, of the old saying, the grandma sat on the stool telling kind of interesting folklore. So we have the power in terms of our stories. The main thing is trying to kind of package that, clean that up, and show that the African voice has something to offer in terms of a new and interesting lens on what could actually otherwise be quite an old and already kind of hackneyed genre or story. So I think the more we do that, the more we can sort of reach out internationally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think my time is almost up.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes, lovely to meet you, Aaron. Yes.